in our show, I think we are showing how it manifests in different ways. It becomes a metaphor for so many things.
Yeah.
For interpersonal, how we commodify interpersonal relationships, or what the system doesn't provide and what we still crave as human beings, what we still need, even when we're playing within the rules of the system, that our nature requires certain fundamental things, whether they fit or not, and how we allow those elements of ourselves to be a part of the system.
And how we are entrenched in a specific system that we kind of take for granted. Like, we're in a system where we buy and sell, and we attach worth to things through that system, and that system has an effect, and we sort of go through our lives oftentimes thinking that that's the only way, thinking that it's a given, and it's not, and it has a specific effect on us and on the earth and on all of the beings.
And it's one of the things I love about the piece and how we're creating it is that we're not saying good and bad, and there is no sort of evil force that's being fought against or whatever. It's these people trying to live in the most useful way, really, or in the most, I don't know, not happy is a weird word. What would you say as far as what they're seeking, what these women are seeking? Fulfillment.
I think like authentic, true self.
Mm-hmm.
Like, to me, that's what it is that we've made assumptions that we have to be a certain way, and that I know in my life I've definitely experienced that doesn't actually feel true or honest to myself. And I think that's what these characters are struggling with, is that they're given a bunch of ways of how life should go, and then they feel like that's not right, but they don't know what the other options are. They're trying to find those other options.
Has anybody wrestled with wanting to make this about good and bad? Because I know that I have certainly wrestled with that, wanting to say, like, no, of course this should be a piece about how oil extraction is terrible and we need to find a better way. Does anybody else wrestle with that? I mean, I can be very black and white, but
no, it's the opposite. I find so much in life isn't bad, and so it's hard, and that's so hard to communicate. But I mean, art is one of those ways to communicate the gray or the complicated. But that's hard. So I think this is a part of what we're doing. That struggle is to communicate a struggle.
Yeah, and to me,
metaphor.
Yeah, and I feel like to me the black and white, or the good and bad, or the useful, not useful, it's so easy to go into that place, and I think it's really based still in the hierarchical kind of colonial mentality.
Yeah.
I think it's part of what we're trying to change, is this idea that, like you say, there's so much integration in ourselves as people and in our reality, and it's hard. That's what makes it hard. I think if there was a clear answer, we would have taken it by now. Like, I think, that's part of it, is that we need to change our minds about how to even perceive reality.
I'm interested to talk about how we see the feminine, because so much of our show is focused on how the feminine relates to the industry like that. So I'm wondering, how can I phrase that as a question?
Well, I think we became very aware, even our assumption going in perhaps, but then as soon as we started looking into it, both through research and through interviews, that it is a very male-dominated place.
Yeah.
So all the women we talked to found ways of making themselves comfortable, but it wasn't just a natural given in the way that it would be in a society that has a more balanced demographic, really.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And how did they make themselves feel comfortable? Even the structure and the way that the structure is coming together has there's a lot of cyclical nature to it. There are aspects of shared repetition. The idea of a shamanic natural force being a part of it that is also bubbling up from the internal. So I think the sense of internal and external and sort of concrete, linear, and cyclical symbolism all intertwining in a fairly organic way, and even being directly related, if not at times the same thing. And that, I think, there's a real beauty in the piece in that nature. And again, that goes back to, in some ways for me, taking out an idea of good and bad or judgment, and just saying, this is how we're cycling through these topics, and this is what keeps coming back, and these are the needs that keep coming up, and these are the things that make us upset or unsettled again and again and again as we...
That's right, and the cyclical nature especially came up today, didn't it, when we were talking about boom and bust, and how, I keep on thinking back to Roman times and Greek times, and how society keeps on going through these real moments and times of prosperity into the bust, which is obviously what's happening now. Maybe in Alberta, and how we continue to cycle through that.
And what I find so interesting about that from a personal point of view, and I think this is something we can maybe look at more in the show because this is, the boom bust has been sort of a layer that we've become more aware of. We were sort of focused on the boom when we first started, right? And then now
that's what it was.
Yeah, exactly. Now we're seeing the potential for bust. And I know in my own life, when I've had the busts, we in our society talk about often like the boom as being the positive or the thing you want to go for. But I've had some amazingly happy and joyous and quite special and beautiful and sensitive times in bust situations in my own life. In like situations where if you looked on the outside, this would be not the goal. And I wonder too, as we continue to interview people, as we continue to delve into this, what are the opportunities that come out of a bust environment, and what do you lose when you're in the boom environment?
That's right.
Well, and I think that's part of what I think makes the show have staying power, and also a broader scope in the sense that as a planet, we're sort of living on this high of this industrial boom, right? This industrial revolution, technological revolution boom. And we know that there's a massive bust coming, like a massive bust, like a bust beyond just the little recession.
The bust of all busts.
Yeah, like we know it, right? Because we're at such an extreme of boom. We know there's going to be a bust. And that's interesting to me, because I always think that there's going to be a lot of beauty in the bust, that I think we would have allowed it to happen sooner had we not been so afraid of it and so conditioned to be afraid of bust. Which again, for me, is connected to, we've talked about this, connected to the capitalist system that just does not have the same kind of staying power as I think was the original idea. We're doing it again, like what you were saying, like with the process that we're starting to create on a microcosm, the type of environment we would like to see more and more. So whether that's the sort of environment as we've been thought to think of it, or like everything is nature, right? Like everything we make is nature, and how can we make an environment in daily life, no matter where we are, that is more conducive to collaborative, healthy living? Some levels.